What if fear of the truth didn't hold us back?
Instead of having to do the research yourself, we've done it for you. Tune in each week as real moms drop some truth bombs.
Answers start now.
Welcome back to Truth Moms Podcast. Today's episode is all about functional genetic testing. Let's drop some truth bombs. But first, let me introduce our amazing guest, Dr. Chad Yarbrough. Did I say it right?
You said it perfect.
Oh, good. Yes. She's a bit of a tongue tie kind of person, too.
Yeah, me too.
Dr. Chad Yarbrough is the founder of MaxGen Labs, a leader in genetic testing for functional medicine and nutrigenomics. I'm going to butcher that.
You got it.
All right. His passion is personalized healthcare. Began early as he cared for his father who battled ALS. This experience gave him firsthand insight into the frustration of seeking answers from countless doctors, a challenge that shaped his approach to medicine. As a practitioner, Dr. Chad specialized in autism, infertility, and optimizing overall health. He used genetics to tailor treatment strategies for his patients, recognizing a critical gap in the industry, the need for comprehensive, privacy-focused genetic testing. He founded MaxGen Labs to provide high-quality, practitioner-driven genetic insights. In addition to leading MaxGen Labs, Dr. Chad plays an active role in developing cutting-edge nutrigenomic and functional medicine tests. A sought-after speaker, he is committed to educating clinicians on the integration of genetics into patient care, helping them to leverage genetic data to improve health outcomes.
Wow, that was a lot.
It was a lot.
I'm glad you got through that.
Me too.
Maddie likes to write.
Yeah. Also, just so you guys know, this is my first episode back postpartum. So there is a little baby here. I don't know if we're going to get through this. My first one would sleep forever. This one's a little bit nuttier. So if I pop up and stuff, sorry about that.
And congratulations, Brittany.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're actually headed to Jamie over at Hopewell to do our MaxGen Labs with her. Because I didn't realize I mean, genetics don't change whether you're 1 day or 1 month or 10 years or 30 some years old, but we just never had anything like that. So it's become one of the first things that we do now. We're like, hey, how's she doing? Is she, bilirubin, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, and MaxGen, we've got to add that in there. So I know her health, because that really shaped how we did our care for our firstborn, for River, was using one of those labs from you guys. So appreciate it. Yeah, because of River, I ended up getting it for myself, which is awesome to look at, but really for my kids, because as you look at healthcare, from a functional standpoint of like what we're going to end up doing, that was the most helpful thing that I had, because if her genetics is telling me that this roadmap may not be good for certain things or certain medications, I wanted to be able to have that in my back pocket. So that really is helpful for us.
And what is like the difference between, just regular like traditional blood panels that, doctors will run versus the genetic testing? Like why, what's the biggest difference?
Well, blood work's great. I love it. I'm never going to knock it. I've used to draw thousands of dollars worth of blood work on every patient. But that's a snapshot. That's a snapshot of where they're at that moment. Mm-hmm. Genetics is the lifelong tendencies of the person you're treating. So you look at their weaknesses and their strengths. So what do we need to pay attention to? So I love it to begin, and then you order the lab work based off that. Because if someone's going to be prone to thyroid issues or T3 conversion, folate levels, we got to watch those. And those may not be normal labs that your PCP is ordering every month.
Right.
So it's quite a bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was with our firstborn, we realized we didn't know the MTHFR, which I keep calling the motherfucker gene. But it's we didn't realize that, because that really truly does mess up things. But she has the SNP, and that was kind of where our roadmap took us of like, hey, well, amongst other things, in my labs, I'm always D3 deficient. So during my pregnancy, I was going to Hopewell and I was like, hey, instead of just doing IVs, can I have an injection of D3? Because I'm plus, it being the winter, right? But I'm prone to D3 deficiencies. Those are things that you learn, and you're like, hey, how do I course the way for my children and myself and my health? And I think that's what's really crazy, is because you're right. Blood work is just like, hey, at this moment in this time, this is you. Mm-hmm. And MaxGen really takes it a step further and it's like, no, this is your blueprint.
Yeah. What like with the, is it MTHFR? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Like what are the, I guess, genetic symptoms of that? Like what what should you be avoiding and whatnot? Because I know a
If
lot
you
of
have the
people
SNP.
do have that SNP. Yeah.
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 The symptoms of it?
Yeah.
Well, MTHFR, in my opinion, I call it a disadvantage.
Okay.
It's been around for a long time.
Okay.
It's not something that's just popped up recently. It does put someone at a disadvantage in methylation. Just because you have it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have issues, but you are going to be prone to those issues. It's
Right.
a tendency, once again. So people who have it, and I believe it's become more of a problem in recent years because our environment's become more toxic. You know, our bodies we detox every day. You know, we are constantly detoxing. And there's a book called Detoxify or Die, and I love that book because we're constantly detoxing.
Right.
And if you have this gene, an MTHFR gene variant, you're going to have some issues in methylation.
Right.
Now, methylation's one part of phase 2 liver. It's not, the end all be all, but it's important for over 400 different pathways. And that comes from breaking down homocysteine, which is a cardiovascular marker, cardiovascular disease that also is implicated in dementia and Alzheimer's.
Wow.
Just low mood too. People who are depressed that may not really respond to SSRIs or just maybe not fully depressed, but they're just low mood. A lot of times it'll be MTHFR. You give them a little bit of methylfolate, which is what MTHFR makes. So you're kind of bypassing that. And they feel a lot better, almost instantaneously.
Wow.
So it can be anything from cardiovascular disease to it's associated with autism, ADHD, ADD, and all kinds of things.
Yeah. The way that our practitioner described it was lanes of traffic, right? So if we have 5 lanes of traffic, River may have like 3. Okay. And so if you're adding toxins upon toxins, she may not be able to, as you say, detox as fast.
Yeah.
So that was like the big eye opener for me on what we, now where we live, because we live in a high traffic airplane zone. Mm-hmm. And so I'm starting to notice all these airplanes and I'm like, oh, high emissions. Oh my gosh. And we take, like tons of Epsom salt baths. And I was like, oh, we're trying to detoxify our bodies, but I can tell when she's overloaded, from the day, because she has a lot, like her emotions or her body tends to just be more tense than everybody else. And so it's kind of wild when you actually take a look at it and you're like, okay. And she also has something called the warrior gene.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, which is great because she has high pain threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's bad because then we're like, all right, wait a minute. Or
is she okay?
Yeah.
Right. Is genetic testing the only way to figure out if you do have that gene mutation, or is there other tests?
That's the only way to test for
Okay.
it. Some doctors will order an homocysteine and then just use that, but that doesn't tell you yes or no. Okay. And like I said, the homocysteine is just a blood draw. It's a snapshot. Okay. So you got to do the genetics to actually know the tendency there. Okay. Because somebody may have had a lot of whole food folate that week. Homocysteine was pretty good.
Right.
But if they have the gene, which is not checked normally via blood, that homocysteine may be elevated, down the road.
Right. What's the big controversy then? Because I feel like when we started doing some research about this online, we were like, some people are kind of not a fan of genetic testing. Yeah. What do you see in your practice as far as some of the maybe the roadblocks, or because I feel like what you do is monumental and I don't see anybody else really doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So obviously there are some people that are going to come for your statements.
Yeah, I think that comes from the difference in allopathic medicine and functional medicine.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you have MTHFR, it's not causative of any disease. So it's not going to cause any type of diagnosis of having it. So your traditional PCPs are not going to want to order it. I think some different organizations are actually saying not to order it. It's not worth ordering. But it makes a big deal for people who just don't feel good.
Right.
And there's plenty of research connecting it to all different things. So I don't know. I think from a functional standpoint, it's very important. But from a mainstream, making sure you're not going to die type thing, it's not that important to most PCPs.
Yeah. Hold on.
It's kind of the same thing with functional blood work and optimal ranges and then sick ranges.
Right.
You go to your PCP like, oh, you're fine, but your A1C is at like 5.9.
Right. But then that's what's wild to me is that even if you don't agree with it as from an allopathic standpoint, what does it hurt for someone to have that knowledge of what's going on in their body? That's what I'm finding with our, we have girlfriends and that are just you're about to cry. We have girlfriends in dysfunctional that are, you know, walking the functional path, and a lot of the times they come from the place of, I ended up finding this profession because me myself went through this, whether it was mold toxicity and learning that, or, you know, something else is going on with their bodies, inflammation of something, and they go down this hill down this rabbit hole of things that are happening to them, and a lot of times they're just finding these doctors are right, you're fine, your blood work's fine. Well, obviously you don't feel fine and you're not doing fine. So in my argument, I don't understand why allopathic doctors, it does no harm to them, right? You're ordering blood work, and whether or not you believe that it works, this person just wants to know about their body. How could you be against it?
Right.
I think it's standard of care. You know, most practitioners that are traditionally trained, they don't want to deviate from the standard of care, because then their license is kind of on the line.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then insurance, you may get, they may not cover it. And if you don't, if you order MTHFR through your primary care and you try to run insurance and you get a denial, you could see, I've seen costs upwards of $700 just for MTHFR.
Wow.
I mean, you can come to us and get 200 different variants for $200 cash.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer.
That's wild. I didn't think about that.
And you're going to want to know the warrior gene. You're going to want to know, your vitamin D genes, the B12 genes. There's so many important genes that are related to MTHFR.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one gene of like 7 or 8 in that methylation cycle.
Yeah.
So if you're just looking at MTHFR, to me, that's almost malpractice in and of itself. Because
Right.
you've got so many other things to look at.
Yeah.
Right. I also think this is gonna be me being a little pompous, but I also think maybe a lot of them don't know how to read that roadmap, right? And because
true.
if that's not your standard of care, because I remember when I went with Jamie, right? Jamie from Hopewell, who we've interviewed before, walked me through every part of that, right? And she actually had a summary. So I walked in and I was like, okay, here's you, here's River, and we'll do the same for Lennon. But in my girlfriend who's in allopathic medicine, she sees a doctor, and I was like, hey, make sure you ask them to kind of review it with you. And she was like, she wouldn't. No. Right. And she ordered it from MaxGen. So this wasn't like she asked them. She just said, hey, could you read this paper? And so there's a part of me that wonders if they don't want to read it or they can't, right?
Because I don't really know what to offer beyond
right.
that.
Because how do you summarize something you were never trained in?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
The MaxGen reports are pretty easy to interpret.
Yeah.
But it can be a lot, and it can be very...
mine was 27 pages.
Yeah.
It's a lot of info.
Yeah.
You have to sit and read page 1 and then go to page 2 and page 3. And doctors don't make enough to sit there and go through all that with you unless you're charging, a ton of money.
Right. That's true. Time is another factor. Because you have what, 5 to 10 minutes really with the doctor?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're good like Jamie, normally they can take a peek at it and they know what's going on pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So used to them.
But Jamie's special.
Yeah, she is. She really is. She's somebody that I would say is a mentor for me in the functional. I mean, she's how I found you guys, and so I really think that what she said before in our last interview was when you go down this route of functional medicine for yourself as a human, not even as a professional. If you're just, I'm a person, I want to know more about myself. You have to ask those questions. And I think that's what you're saying too, is we're going to give you a 27-page report. Even if you're not seeing a doctor to kind of walk it through and summarize, we're here. Yeah. But you have to look at it and you literally the first thing I said was, what is MTHFR? Like, what is this? And you have to Google it. You have to look at it. You have to study it, and you have to then ask more questions to your doctor. And that requires kind of self-reliance. And that, I think some people that are traditionally in allopathic as a patient aren't used to that either.
I think they also don't want to know. Some people don't want to know things about themselves. Like, I feel like my dad's very much like that. Like, he doesn't want to know what's wrong with him in a weird way.
But it's not something that's wrong with you.
Right. Just not knowing even more. I think some people are in denial about that. Right. Yeah.
But if I didn't know River had the MTHFR, I may be more inclined to give her, what's the word? Why can't I think? My brain's not working today. Folic. Yeah. Or even when we talked about why can't I think right now?
Vaccines?
Nope.
It's okay.
Food dyes. I went down the road of food dyes because I was like, wait a minute, right? If she has some different mutations in her bloodstream, even if a regular kid just goes balls off the walls, she may be worse, right? Right. And I don't know if there's any connection to that or at all, but those were the things that made me start going down that rabbit hole, was looking at her genetics.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's other genes for food dyes, I think.
Food sensitivities and things like that.
Yeah, especially food sensitivities. Food dyes are a little different too.
But so tell me, because I know this is kind of a little off the beaten path, but in your bio where we talked about your dad having ALS, what was the streamline for that to here we're starting MaxGen?
Oh man, so ALS is a nightmare.
Yeah.
And you're trying everything you can to keep someone you love alive. I mean, you're trying everything, and you're doing things that's not traditional, but you're also doing things that are experimental. And in my opinion, you have to at least try.
Right.
My dad may not make it, but somebody else's dad's going to get it down the road too. And if we can help somebody find something that works, by all means.
Right.
So I was just really disappointed. The MDs, I was watching the MDs. Some of them were like, Mayo Clinic was like, just go home, you're going to die.
What?
There's nothing we can do, just go make arrangements, which I understand.
Right.
But then you had a couple MDs who were really trying. We tested positive for mold, had a really weird Lyme test. So we're going down Lyme, we're going down the mold pathways, and we're seeing some changes.
Right.
It's not very hopeful at this point because it was so far progressed, but you could see changes in how he acted after we would do a treatment.
Right.
And the medical board went after these MDs. One of them lost their license. They ran another one out of town. They just were all over these guys who were just trying to help.
Right.
And it was so disappointing to me that you couldn't even attempt to try as a medical doctor to help someone. And that just bothered me to my core.
Right.
Because I was on the fence of like, do I want to go to med school? Do I want to go to osteopathic school? Do I want to go to chiropractic school? And I'm seeing all these chiropractors doing the same thing. They're trying hard. They're doing all these nutritional testing, nutrition supplements, working with the MDs, working with some of the IV clinics. And this is 20 years ago. This is, a glutathione push. I think we paid $1,500 for it back then.
Holy crap.
Wow. Yeah. And just seeing that was just kind of disheartening.
Right.
And I went the chiropractic path, which might not, you never know which pathway you really should have taken, but I've ended up more kind of doing, genetics and stuff, which is not typical of a chiropractor, but at least my philosophy behind what we do is sound, in my opinion.
Right.
So,
and to your point again, right? Like even if it didn't work or, quote unquote work, it still gave a better quality of life, right? Wouldn't you want someone to ease in if there isn't anything you can do and ALS is taking over? At least at the end of the day, like don't you want to lessen pain? Don't you want to like make someone feel better?
Yeah.
It goes back to that standard of care that we talked about earlier.
Right.
If you deviate from the standard of care, your license is on the line. So a lot of these doctors didn't want to do that. Look what happened to the guys who tried. They ran them out of the city.
Do you think, I know this is again off the beaten path here, do you think that what's happening now in the government could potentially help these guys? Do you see a path forward, or do you still think it's a really long road?
It's still a really long road. It is. But I like where things are going. I think post-COVID woke a lot of people up.
Right.
Like we have to take our health in our own hands. Our PCP may not be trained to optimize our health and wellness. We're starting to question different things that people just blindly assumed were good.
Right.
And I think where we're going, maybe easing the restrictions on some of the stem cell stuff that's out there, I think is going to improve a lot of things. But I think it's a long road still.
All right, real quick, if you're loving this chat, let's make it official. Hit follow, leave a quick review, and take a screenshot to share on your Instagram story. Tag us at Truth Moms Pod so we can send you some love. All right, back to it.
What other things are you seeing that are coming up on these testing that you're seeing repeatedly?
Commonalities. Yeah.
There's a lot. You see a lot of patterns.
Sorry, it's a loaded question.
Like with spectrum kids, you see a couple different patterns. Fatigue, you see a couple different patterns. But, I worked with Paige Adams. I don't know if you ever remember her. She's passed away. And she told me she was a really big autism expert and was really working with these kids. She's like, I've started treating everybody like I treat spectrum kids. And I think she's right. Some of these things we were doing with them back in the day helped a lot of people.
Right.
But we see a lot of patterns in like oxidative stress type stuff. If someone's under a lot of oxidative stress, your mitochondria are not going to make energy. You're not going to heal appropriately. You're going to have all kinds of issues, from cancer to fatigue and all sorts of stuff. I see patterns in different detox pathways. I had a lady come see me once. I love this story. She's probably mid-50s, African-American lady, really sweet. And she came in to see me. This is back when I was practicing still. And it took her 2 hours to fill out my intake form, which should have taken about 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going into my lunch break, and I'm like, I'm getting hangry. What is going on?
Yeah.
Like, I've got to eat. And she came in, and I've kind of quickly figured out what's going on. She was early onset dementia.
Oh.
She couldn't remember.
Okay.
And she was like, money's not a thing. Let's do everything we can. I'm like, yes, I like that. We'll do everything we can.
Yeah.
And Mayo Clinic sent her home, like they did my dad. We make arrangements.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt did the same thing. And she was calling my office every day. Why am I seeing Dr. Yarbrough? Why am I seeing Dr. Chad? Why am I seeing you guys? What's this bill for? Every day. My staff is like, what is going on? Yeah. And I'm like, it's dementia.
Wow.
So we ran her genetics. She had a bunch of detoxification genes, not just MTHFR, but a lot of the CYPs that can flood the methylation cycle and cause even more issues. That's why it's so much important to get a full panel instead of just MTHFR. I literally cringe when I see just LabCorp MTHFR tests. I'm like, well, this doesn't tell me a whole lot.
Right.
Because there's so many other things that can compound it and make it so much worse.
Right.
And we started treating her with some detoxification support, supporting those pathways that were weak. Put her in a sauna a couple days a week to help sweat things out. And we actually ran a urine toxin test on her. And it lit up like a Christmas tree. We already knew she had genetic issues with detoxification, which is a mild thing, but she had all these toxins in her environment. So I worked with her husband. We cleaned up the environment. We got her on support protocols, sauna, and she started calling the office once a week.
Wow.
Okay.
So that's a success, right? It's an improvement.
Yeah. You're seeing it.
Right. And we're literally judging how good she is, how often she's calling the office.
That's amazing.
That's an amazing
And
story.
It went to 2 weeks.
Wow.
And then it stopped. And then one day we got a message on the thing. Hey, I just want to thank you guys and thank Dr. Yarbrough. I'm fine now.
Wow.
And I'm like, you could have at least come in and said thanks,
Yeah.
That drives me nuts with patients. They're like infertility, they're coming in, and then all of a sudden you get a message, hey, what's a good prenatal? Like, why are you asking?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm pregnant. Well, why didn't you tell me?
Yeah, right.
Why didn't you call and tell me?
I'd like the follow up,
You need that reinforcement that what we do actually works. And
Right.
it's shockingly how well it works. Just nutrients.
So you're not practicing anymore, you said, is that all right? Okay. But you are highly, you're doing a lot of, why can't my brain work today? It's because of this.
Had a baby.
I know. You are doing a lot of speeches and a lot, you're speaking a lot, right? Are you training as well? Are there people that you're training in this field, or do you see the bigger path with?
We're working on a training program. It's just, how long did it take me to get on the show? 2 months?
That was my problem.
I leave tomorrow and I'm not back for a month.
Right.
It's tough to sit down and film those.
Right.
I'd love to get some other doctors to come in and help do that. And I think that's what we're going to do is bring in some of the experts in those specific fields.
Right.
Like histamine.
Okay.
That's an hour or 2 hour training course just on histamine. Methylation, MTHFR is probably about the same thing. So we may bring in some other doctors to come in and help do that. I'm just too busy.
Yeah. Do you have doctors, obviously Nashville based, but any others? Are there a few doctors in the realm that you think other people should kind of look forward to in your practice?
Absolutely. We've got, Jamie, of course, she's a special individual. We have to take care of her. She called me last night or 2 nights ago at 11:30 p.m. And she said, are you still awake? And I'm like, yes, Jamie. She said, I'm so sorry. I'm like, we have to take care of you, Jamie. We have to take care of you.
I need her to live forever.
Protect her at all costs.
I've honestly talked to her twice already today. I'm like, how do you have the time?
She responds to you.
I will say my little story about her was when we had Lennon, we called the office and we're like, hey, we're going to add another baby. And they're like, hey, Jamie's got, she's full. And so we're going to have to see another doctor. And within 20 minutes, the girl called back. She's like, actually, Jamie put a note in to keep Lennon. And I was like, that to me is way above and beyond the fact that she's willing to, she sees whole families and she doesn't want us to split up and she wants to all take care of us together. Outside of everything else that she does, just the fact that she would be like, no, they're mine. I'm taking care of them.
Right.
And I was like, I need you to live forever, please.
I was actually seeing somebody else and she took me on and talked to somebody and said,
yeah,
hey,
when she believes in what she does, she's full in. And that's somebody that is something special in any field, functional, allopathic, even naturopathic, right? When someone's willing to see you through the whole thing and they don't want to let you go because they believe in you so vividly as an individual and your care, you can't ask for better.
True.
This is now the Jamie Hypa podcast.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to switch gears just for a second and talk about, this is something that we get asked about a lot, and it's very controversial, vaccines and being able to see if you're predispositioned to have a vaccine injury. Yeah, go ahead and...
Oh, yeah. Well, you did say you're not practicing anymore. so your license isn't on the line.
Well, I feel like we can talk about that a little more now than we used to.
Yeah, 100%.
For the last 15 years, we've been scared to even say the V word.
Yeah.
You're instantly shadow banned on every social media. It's been kind of scary how censored it's been.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
As far as a genetic predisposition to it, there are some. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, they've been in my report I've never talked about this ever. But they've been in my report for many years. They've just been kind of hidden. Mm-hmm. Certain doctors know where they're at. But there are some research that show increased adverse reactions. I think MMP9, IRS1, some of the TNF alpha genes are associated with it. And a lot of people like to look at MTHFR for that. But there's some others that are really more important in that regard.
Right.
I can't remember off the top of my head which all they are, but there are some.
Okay.
Wow, that's great.
I feel like...
And there's, not to interrupt, but there's another thing with that I like to talk about. And I spoke about this in Chicago once, and the whole room, I hope 300 MDs were kind of basically gasping when I went through all the data on it.
Yeah.
And it has to do with glutathione. There's a lot of research that show low glutathione, not just in the kid, but in the mom and dad at conception, has a big issue with some of these, like with autism particularly. But another thing that we look at is a CYP gene that breaks down Tylenol. When you break down Tylenol, you break it down into a substance called NAPQI. NAPQI is extremely oxidative, liver toxic. It's why so many people end up in the ER from Tylenol poisoning. And to counteract the Tylenol poisoning, you give them NAC, which is a glutathione precursor. So it's bringing down glutathione levels, Tylenol is.
Right.
So we already have the Tylenol research here, or the glutathione research here that shows, there's connection with spectrum. And there's certain genes in the CYP genes that break down Tylenol faster into that product. And we do see that gene pop a lot in kids that have on spectrum.
Wow.
So when you go get a vaccine, your doctors typically say, well, if they start running a fever, go home and take a Tylenol. Mm-mm. So
I forgot about
a lot of people like to point a finger at the vaccine. I like to point the finger at the Tylenol.
Yeah.
Especially if you have those gene variants. If you have those gene variants to break down Tylenol that way, and you have MTHFR, and you have a lot of the glutathione genes, and you give Tylenol to those kids, they have no chance.
Yeah. That's wild. Because I start going down the rabbit hole with Tylenol myself because of realizing with the fevers, right? Because that's the first thing as a mom when you're taking this all back outside of genetics, you're like, okay, why am I quelling a fever? And then you start looking at the side effects of it, and you're like, wow, that's wild. And the thing is that it's in everybody's cabinet.
Yeah.
It's in, not everyone, but it's in a lot of people's medicine cabinets, and it has been for a very long time.
It's in workplaces. Like
it's banned in a lot of countries too.
It is.
Really?
Did not know that.
Yeah.
Cuba. You can't get it in Cuba at all.
Wow.
The Cuba study, look into it. It's really interesting.
Huh.
That's wild. Okay. Another rabbit hole for me.
Yeah. I actually went to school with the grandchildren of the grandfather that invented Tylenol.
Really?
Yeah. No, I thought it was so cool back then. Now I'm like, no, sorry.
Same thing with Kellogg's, right?
Yeah, right.
But the other thing with Tylenol too, it's just like, you always think about the red and the white pill, but they've marketed now towards kids, right? There's kids Tylenol. Is that kind of is it still similar, right?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Just smaller dosage. So
use anything else.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing that I thought in the cupcake vaccine world, right? I know we call it cupcake online.
Yeah.
But they, one of the things that had come up was that how can you give these dosages, or who's managing or who regulated the dosage amount of what you're giving these children? And the same thing in that realm as well is like, how do you know who's regulating the Tylenol dosages?
Right.
Cuba. I'm looking at that study.
Yeah, I know. It's very interesting.
Hey mama, if you're listening and thinking, I need to know more about my family's genetics, we've got a little treat for you. We're talking to MaxGen Labs today, but if you're ready to dive in right now, they're giving our listeners 10% off any of their at-home genetic tests. Whether it's nutrition, fitness, detox, or methylation, MaxGen helps you take the guesswork out of your health. Just go to maxgenlabs.com and use code TruthMoms at checkout for 10% off. That's TruthMoms for 10% off, because knowing your body is the first step to taking control of your health.
Are there any other medications that you can kind of see a predisposition where they might not have a good reaction besides just Tylenol that people might not need to, be aware of?
There's a huge whole industry on that. It's called pharmacogenetics.
Okay.
They look at the genes that influence how we metabolize certain medications, different receptors. We have a test. I don't know if we're going to really release it yet, but we have it done. It's really interesting. There's a lot of different companies that do it. Really, really important. Some of the psychiatric doctors I look at, they said they can't practice without it. Because, if you have depression and you go to a psychiatric doctor, you may try 4 or 5 antidepressants before they find the right one.
Mm-hmm,
so if you swab your cheek and have a little better idea of what's going to happen, you can narrow that down a lot quicker.
Right. Yeah. And you can also prevent a lot of the side effects,
Yeah. But a lot of times a little methylfolate and you clean up the diet and the environment, they do great. You don't have to resort to pharmaceuticals.
What, because I know that let's talk about MaxGen. There's a few different panels. If someone's just starting out, right, like they're going online, they're looking it up, they're like, what's all this? Where do you suggest they start?
With us?
Yeah.
At least the Max Function panel. It's our functional med panel. So it looks at MTHFR, all the methylation genes, all the oxidative stress genes, neurotransmitters. It's a 200 gene panel. It's pretty big. It's $200. Probably the best bang for your buck online right now.
Yeah.
Our Works panel is a little more comprehensive. It's got the food and fitness stuff added. So your gluten markers, your GI markers, leaky gut, things like that, dietary stuff.
Yeah.
So the Works is really what is our best seller.
Yeah.
And we actually have a family pack on that too. So if the full family wants to get tested, we mark it down.
Yeah. And that's what I suggest, because I think it's great to know about yourself. But for, someone who's coming into the new mom realm, that was the biggest, like I said, for River, that was the biggest thing when she offered MaxGen. She was like, hey, do you want to do this panel just to see where we are before we make any decisions on our health? And I was like, yeah, why not?
Yeah. Right.
And that really changed my view on how to care for my children. So
I honestly thought it was way more expensive, but I'm going to be next week. I'm going to be like, we're doing MaxGen.
Oh yeah. No, I would tell anybody if there was anything that you wanted to put your money towards, it's that, because that's going to tell you, right. There's no amount of supplements in the world that you can take. My sister's one of them. She just said to me, she was like, hey, my hair's not coming in, or my hair's falling out or something. I'm just going to take, I don't know, what is
biotin.
it? Yeah. Biotin. And I was like, no. Don't take anything until you get a blood panel, right? Or just, so I was like, hey, instead of doing a blood panel for your birthday, I'll send you MaxGen.
Yeah.
Because that way right? Talk to your doctor and then you figure out the supplements. Because a lot of times we kind of run the rat race of just buying a bunch of stuff, hoping for the best, and then not really knowing, and there's nothing more important than knowing who you are as a person, right? How I'm going to take this drug, or how I'm going to, maybe it's a deficiency in something like B12 or D3. Like maybe there's something else that you need and it's not biotin, right?
Yeah. But I would think, like, listening to all this, I feel like everybody should just get it done.
Well, that's why I don't understand why it's so controversial.
Is that the goal? Is that your ultimate goal? Yeah.
I think everybody,
obviously.
And I think one day we'll get there where everyone's genetics are on file somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Which can be a little scary.
That is kind of scary now that you say it out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they already kind of are with the Ancestry.com. Might as well, you're using it to find your cousins in a third world country. You might as well use it to find your health.
Yeah.
We were the first to actually advertise genomic privacy. So we're the first that wouldn't sell any data. 23andMe came out, they were selling genomic data to Genentech back in like 2011.
Yep.
Okay, now I don't feel safe using this for my patients, really. So that's basically why we started MaxGen, is because I didn't feel comfortable using any other lab.
Yeah.
Because we handle the samples internally, the extractions to the machines. We own everything. So it does not leave our system. And a lot of other labs are contracting through other labs. You don't know what the other lab's doing with it.
Right.
We're 100% in-house. And we don't sell data, don't share data, nothing. I have probably 200 SpongeBobs in my system, just people using fake names.
Oh, wow.
So it's a big deal. The data privacy is huge.
Right, 100%.
But I do think it's something that everybody needs to have. And we have a lot of pediatricians that run us on every patient that walks in the door.
Yeah.
Nice.
You have to know these tendencies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's even genes that can influence the lab ranges. Like our B12 page, there's a lot of genes that are extremely misunderstood with B12. And we'll actually give you a range for you where your B12 level should be based off your genetics.
And whether or not you're methyl sensitive.
Correct,
right?
Yeah, we try to predict that.
Yeah.
Okay. Walk me through your process around how you do all the testing from like beginning to end.
So ours is, we've tried to do everything as easy because, I was a practitioner for 7, 8 years before starting MaxGen. So we tried to make it as easy as we could for the practitioner and for the general public. We were actually a consumer-facing company first. Basically, you just buy the test. You don't need a doctor's order. You just come on the website, purchase it. HSA cards will work on the website.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so use those HSA
That's
bucks.
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is huge.
Took me a bit to get that approved, but we're approved for that. And then the test comes in the mail. You just swab your cheek. Just wash your mouth out. Don't drink any milk or citrus products. Swab the cheek. Break it in the vial. Now, we use a preservative fluid in our, it's non-toxic in case somebody gets a hold of it. It's not non-toxic, but it preserves the DNA in transit. So other labs that don't use that fluid, you're going to have degradation in transit. You're going to have some maybe potentially bad results. And we've experimented with that. It's just worth more for us to use that preservative fluid because you got to have good data to give good recommendations.
Right.
And then you get a report back in about a week. We advertise 2 weeks, but really we're on about a 7-day turnaround time right now.
Okay.
And then you get the report back. Now, this is where it gets real complicated for a lot of other labs. Some of these reports are so hard to interpret. They're 100 pages long. Where do I start? You just glaze over. I don't, okay, we've designed these reports in a very special way. It's working for things that are going to influence things the most in the beginning. So start at page 1 and just implement those. And then go to page 2. And it explains everything for you. We've tried to break it down so easy that you're not going to really need a doctor to go through it with you.
Yeah.
Now, some people will. If you really got a lot of issues, it's going to be beneficial. But you should be able to read it and understand it. And go page 1 to page 2. Don't skip ahead. MTHFR is like page 8 or 9 or 10. You have all these other things that we need to do before we even get there.
Yeah.
That's why so many people have trouble when they get to MTHFR. Give them some methylfolate and they're punching a hole in the wall. You spike dopamine. And I've done that. I had a kid cuss out a cop and get arrested. I was like, oops.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. You can't just simply throw methylfolate at somebody.
Yeah.
The methyl sensitive issue.
Right.
There's,
I was going to say the one thing I loved about it was my partner had said that he was like, it's kind of like a National Geographic page. Like, how they have the little bubbles. They're like, this is like your big thing. And this is what it's kind of like. And it really does break it down to an easy read. It's a really great page. I'm excited for you to get it.
I know. Yeah. So if you haven't discovered already, I haven't gotten it done. Brittany has.
Yeah.
So
My whole family.
have you got the new one, Rand?
Mm-mm.
With the blue or the cell on the front page?
I don't think so.
Oh, you may have to do the new one.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. Okay. So how frequently are you updating then?
Constantly.
Yeah.
But we had a massive update this last year, probably around June or July.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't had it then.
yeah. When it comes to infertility, how are you helping with infertility?
Oh, good question.
Infertility's, I think the body's smart enough to know when it can carry a baby full term and when it can't. So you work systemic to local. You don't treat the infertility, you treat the patient who has infertility.
Right.
So if they're inflamed, let's get the inflammation down. If the thyroid's off, let's fix the thyroid. If they've got MTHFR and some clotting issues, let's fix that. Because that's a big thing with infertility. And a lot of times that alone, just easy.
Yeah.
That's a great call because that's something that we talked about again with Hopewell was with me going that 1 year and she's like, I know this feels like a lot, but we have to look at all of the root causes and then find the and then it happened.
Yeah.
I know you're having your frustrations.
I'm 3 months in and I'm like already like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
You've been trying for 3 months?
Yeah. I mean, it's not long, but it's still frustrating every time, right? So
swab your cheek and just start following the directions.
Yeah. But anyways.
Your little yellow brick road.
Yeah.
MaxGen Road.
Yeah. So what's next for MaxGen then? What are you guys? You're Nashville based. How big have you gotten in the last, 10 years, right? Since you've started?
We're up probably 400% in the last
That's insane.
Wow.
3 years.
Do you think that you'll have different locations, or obviously this is an online based company, right?
Yeah.
And you're really working with practitioners, and then obviously there's some consumers that can buy it and then take it to their practitioners. Do you see a place in which maybe MaxGen has on-site practitioners that they can work with in case someone feels like they can't go to their doctor?
We've been discussing it.
Yeah.
Typically, I've just referred people to doctors that use us. We have
Okay.
a physician finder on our website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that everybody that's been using us for a while that applied to be on it and we approve. So we've really vetted these practitioners well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want trouble, or if you have trouble and you want to find someone, that's a great resource. Typically, we just push people to those doctors.
Okay.
And we try to support them as much as we can instead of doing it in-house. I feel
Okay.
like if we had it in-house, it's almost kind of a conflict of interest to our
I got
doctors.
it. Okay.
But we've kind of kicked around the idea of having a high-level overview
Yeah.
of the report if you need
For
some
someone
help.
who doesn't understand it,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Because there is those people that, pretty smart, can handle it on their own, but just may have a couple questions
Right.
that don't really need to go to a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And those
Or
are the
don't feel
people-
comfortable going to their doctor.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the people we might try to help out here soon.
Would another goal, potentially, this might be a stupid question, but would another goal be to be covered by insurance companies eventually? No.
No,
Okay.
absolutely not.
That's why I thought it was a stupid question.
That's not stupid. If you have to have like FDA approval, and I
Okay.
don't want
Yeah, no.
to deal with that because then I can't say
What you want.
what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I didn't know either. That's why I was like, I think this might be stupid, but I'm
Yeah.
going to ask it just in case.
I just love that you're paving the way. This
Yeah.
is, it truly is something there's few things that I get really excited about. And when we were talking about guests on Truth Mom, I was like, we have to talk to MaxGen
Yeah, the third person. It was like
on my guest wish list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I remember
Because
it
I
too.
do think that there's something to be said about people who see a need and a niche in the functional medicine realm, right? It's not just enough to say, hey, let's take a look at your blood work, or hey, let's, talk about, yes, obviously you need to be active and we can talk about organ meats all day long, but there are people like you who are really like, hey, wait a minute, this is a part of this medicine that is not explored enough. And it really does change. I mean, it's changed the way that I have what I do in my household. And it really is something simple. And it is $200 is,
That's not bad.
yeah, that's a dinner out. Like
Yeah.
if you're going to be worried about your health, take something that is down to the cell.
Yep.
It's true.
Absolutely.
That's one other reason we started was I had all these single moms of spectrum kids coming in, and it's $1,000 a lot of times to go see a functional med doc.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if they're waiting tables and your dad might not be around much.
Yep.
And I said, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Right.
And I found this geneticist, and I'm like, we got to make this happen. So we built the report out and be like, okay, if this is this, what would I do? And then we kind of made the algorithms to kind of basically put on paper what we would do in the clinic.
Wow.
So it was kind of a functional medicine visit in a box for $200.
That's great. And it's a week to 2 weeks to know. A lot of times when we do find out that a child has autism or any part of the spectrum, that care to get to that level takes almost a year, right? So to have something that's less than a week of saying, these are what I can do now to help my child, that's invaluable.
Yeah.
I have a employee, Bobby. She's one of our practitioner development leads. She's been with me for 8 years now, I think, 8, 9, pretty much since the beginning. And her kid, he was on the spectrum. You wouldn't even know it now.
Wow.
Yeah, we had an event last year, and I think I had strep throat or something. I was sick, did not feel like speaking, and I had to speak for 20 minutes. I'm like, Bobby, you're going to have to go do this. I'm not getting up there.
Yeah.
And so I had to go up for like two or 3 minutes, introduce everybody, and then Bobby went up and spoke about why she worked with us and her experience with us and her child, and how he's in a baseball tournament now, and showed pictures of it. And she started crying up on stage, and everybody, when this crowd was it was great. I loved it, because we've been in this training course all weekend long on genomics. It's just so left brain. And then you got her up there crying, talking about how her child is, you wouldn't even know, like neurotypical now. You wouldn't even know he had.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
Do you have
That's
a lot of
amazing.
stories like that where somebody will be,
You get kind of used to them.
Yeah.
quite a bit. Kids coming off 7 medications, people losing 100, 150 pounds.
That's amazing.
It's pretty cool.
It's very impactful.
Yeah.
Extremely.
Right. And again, these are
$200.
$200.
Yeah.
That's, I keep saying to myself, I'm like, it really isn't. It's like, it's a haircut, like for, for someone who does their hair dye, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a gym membership for maybe a month.
That's
you're
cutting
like
out Starbucks for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
One trip to Whole Foods.
One trip to Whole Foods
Not
these
even Whole
days.
Foods now.
Yeah.
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 That's the truth.
Yeah.
I'm just so thankful that you guys have something like this out there. Where can you tell us where people can find you? I know this is kind of silly, we tagging and all that stuff, but I do think that it's important to know where people can find you online.
MaxGenLabs.com, the website's a good place to start. Of course, we have the physician finder there as well. Huge resource. Instagram, we post about every other day on Instagram. Facebook, there's a lot of Facebook groups too. There's a lot of MTHFR support groups that are great. I admin a couple of them. There's one, MTHFR and Epigenetics. I am one of the admins of that group. Ton of good info in there. We have our own group too, the MaxGen Labs group. It's a great place to come ask questions. We're in there answering questions all day long. And that's something, I don't see patients anymore, but I do get to contribute back in those Facebook groups and kind of help answer questions.
I sound like such a fangirl, but it's another reason why I really love MaxGen is that the founder and the CEO, like you're a part of it, like you're in it.
Yeah.
And when someone believes in what they do and they're not just a business owner, but they're coming and they're doing the interviews, they're talking to the patients, they're working with the physicians. That to me is, that's also invaluable. So I'm just really like big MaxGen fan over here,
We'll get you a t-shirt.
I mean,
We have some.
I'll wear it.
Our new merch is coming soon.
Yeah, I'm okay. You got any hats? I would love a mom hat.
We have not.
Okay. All right. Well,
We should get
Version
some bucket
2.
hats.
yeah.
Bucket hats?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
I'll wear a bucket hat.
Yeah.
Go all 90s.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yes,
Dr.
thank
Chad.
you
Really
so much.
appreciate you coming
Thank
in.
you guys.
Thanks for tuning in to Truth Moms. Remember, mamas, the truth starts at home.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps us reach more moms like you. And plus, it's free.
Until next time, stay strong, stay curious, and we will keep dropping those truth bombs. Bye.